Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Timo Parker. I'm a vocal coach and I'm here to help you to improve your singing voice. So in this video I want to talk about voice types. I also want to give you some hints on how you can find out which voice type you are and some other helpful things that you should know because there are quite some misconceptions about the voice type. So let's shine a light on it and let's dive into it. So voice types in general are categorizations of different types of singers. So for example, you have a low voice. For men would be, for example, bass singer, baritone, tenor, maybe sometimes even countertenor. And then we have for women, alto, mezzo, soprano, and coloratura soprano. And these voice types are mainly used in the European classical music. So in order to find out which roles should a singer sing, depending on his voice type, and makes the journey a little bit easier to know what repertoire you should look at. But there's one thing that a lot of times people get wrong when they talk about voice types, and one of them is that they categorize voice types depending on the vocal range. If you've seen videos on this channel already, you know that we can all build a wide vocal range with muscle training. If you have not seen any previous videos, you can head over here to this playlist. Basically what I'm talking about in some of these videos is that you can build a very strong and healthy singing voice with 4 octaves if you are training the right muscles. That's something that anybody can achieve with the right muscle training. And that being said, there are almost no limitations if you've trained your instrument properly, because with a 4 octave range you can sing pretty much anything. There are no limits anymore. And that means if that is the case, how would we distinguish if someone sings, for example, a tenor part or bass part, or for example for women, an alto part or soprano part, so higher part or lower part. So your voice sound is depending on your anatomy, the way you're born. For example, taller people tend to have longer vocal cords, maybe also a little bit thicker vocal cords, and shorter people tend to have shorter vocal cords according to their body type. I mean, there are always exceptions. You also have sometimes maybe taller people with smaller vocal cords and the other way around. But basically the way you are built inside of your thyroid cartilage and all the tissue and cartilages around determine how you will sound. And this is also the reason why some people maybe have a higher speaking voice and some have a lower speaking voice. We can manipulate the anatomy to a certain degree with vocal training. For example, when we are stretching our vocal cords all the time and we also start to contract them in chest voice, for example, I'm talking about head and chest voice in this video. If you want, you can head over and watch it. With these exercises, we are training our vocal cords and the vocal cords get thicker over time. That means they get more bassy. So with vocal training, you can actually make your sound more bassy, your normal speaking voice, but also your singing voice, because the vocal cords get thicker. And also depending on how much space you have inside of your thyroid cartilage, also known as the larynx here, it's a bit unspecific. That's why I use always the part that comes together, the cartilage in the front. And this part can be also trained. So when we open up the thyroid cartilage, another video that you can check out, I'm talking about it in this video, where I explain how to open up the thyroid cartilage. So basically what you're doing, you open it up, and because of this you're gaining bigger space, especially between the false vocal cords and vocal cords, in combination also with the yawn that brings these two parts apart from each other. So the false vocal cords and the vocal cords, and the ventricle that is in between opens up and you have a greater sound room, so to say. And if you train these movements regularly, this default position will change over time. So even in a resting position, your thyroid cartilage will be more open than it was before you started training. And in combination with the thickening of the vocal cords, your voice will change over time and you will sound a bit more bassy. You will have a bit more juice to it, I would say, a bit more bassy frequency, which is nice. It's nice to listen to, especially if you're singing high notes and you have a bit more of a round sound up there. So voice types are not necessarily depending on the vocal range you're singing in, and they rather concentrate on the color of the voice. So, for example, if a bass and a tenor singer would sing the same song in the same key, same notes, they would sound very different. And that is because the bass singer's vocal cords are longer, maybe even a little bit thicker as well, could happen, and the tenor vocal cords are much smaller. And this has the result that the tenor, when he sings, sounds much brighter and the bass singer sounds much darker. But also there's a certain limitation regarding the vocal range. And that is because, for example, if we take the same example with a bass singer and a tenor, the bass singer has the potential to produce very low notes because he has very long strings, and longer strings can produce lower notes because they can vibrate a bit slower. But the shorter vocal cords don't really have the ability to reach very low notes. So the bass singer is an advantage there. And also in general, the bass singer, and also the same for female lowest voice, the alto, these two voice types have the greatest potential for the highest vocal range. And that is because they can produce very low notes, and at the same time, if they are trained well with the muscle training, they can also achieve very high notes. So overall vocal range can be very broad. And also voice types can change over time, and that is not necessarily, again, not depending on the vocal range, but rather on the sound. Because the more training you have, the more bass you will have in your voice. And that also could mean that you potentially could sing different voice types. For example, if you were singing tenor parts before, you could consider to sing baritone parts because you have a bit darker sound. But in general, you will not have this richness that a lower voice has down there because you simply don't have the length of the vocal cords, and that's fine. So I just want to get the point across that you don't have to put yourself into a voice type depending on your vocal range, because at the end, with training, you will have all the notes accessible that you will need for any material, except maybe the very low songs where you simply can't reach the note, and that's okay. But that's not something depending on the vocal range, and it's more something about color. So now the question, how can you find out what your voice type is? And the best way to do it is to just determine your lowest note. Your lowest note in your vocal register will give you great information on how long your vocal cords are, and depending on this, you can figure out in which voice type you belong to. I just quickly give you the reference points on where I would categorize more or less each voice type. And there's also now black and white transition, it's a fluent transition. Sometimes they're even voice types, they're in between two of them, for example, baritone tenor or mezzo soprano. So at the end, it's actually also not so important which voice type you are, as long as you have the range and you have an open sound within your throat, you will sound amazing, and then it doesn't really matter so much if you are this or that, So I just give you a reference point, just looking at the piano to remember. So for men, as a tenor, it could be that you are starting to get trouble around this note. I believe it's in F2. If not, I put the right F here on the side. So from there on lower, it's gonna be tough. And let's say from C2 on, this is where a mix is happening, bass, baritone, and baritone, I would say, can reach up down to an A1 down here. And bass definitely has maybe a couple more notes under the A. So yeah, these are some reference points, and also your speaking voice note can give you some great information about your voice type. So if you have a very low speaking note, that could be an indication that you are a lower voice type. But yeah, that is it for men. So for women, it's a bit different, obviously, different gender, different voice type, different anatomy here. So I had some sopranos that I taught that couldn't reach notes under F3, so an octave higher than the tenor. And I also had some that went towards the D3, but this could already be a mixed type between soprano and mezzo. Mezzo normally goes under the D, maybe till A, and anything below is pretty sure an alto voice. And this is also where it gets pretty interesting, because a tenor and an alto are very, very close to each other range-wise, and also the sound. So for example, if you hear an alto singing head voice and a tenor singing head voice, they would sound pretty similar. And if you are not used to the head voice sound, you could even mistake maybe a tenor for an alto for a tenor. So that's just the anatomy here, and that's why they can sound very similar. So after all, I don't think it is very necessary and important to put yourself into a voice type, as long as you focus on having the vocal range you need and having the space in your throat that you need to enjoy yourself when you are singing. And then over time, you will find out which parts you enjoy singing the most. Maybe you have a high voice, but you enjoy more singing, for example, baritone repertoire that is a bit lower, and then you can just go for it. Same for women. For example, if you're an alto and your over sound is a bit darker, but you enjoy to sing high, then just do it. If you have the range, you can just go up there and you will just sound a bit darker than, for example, a mezzo. And that's also fine. That's also the beauty of the instrument, that there are so many different colors available and different options to make a song sound. Alright, to summarize it in one sentence, voice types are not necessarily depending on the vocal range you have, because if you train properly, we all have a quite similar vocal range accessible, at least within men and within women, and it is more depending on your voice sound. So how low, how dark is your voice when you are singing, and then you can decide which parts you enjoy singing the most. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to my channel. I have more voice content planned on this channel, so also make sure to hit the notification bell icon, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye bye.